Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen, and this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
And welcome to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Neuen.
That was the first I'm Don Neuen of 2018.
I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen.
The second one.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Don Neuen, and I'd like to be the first to welcome you back to the first 2018 episode of Cowboy Logic Radio. Ladies and gentlemen.
Boy, have we got a riveting show for you.
Wow, that was pretty good, Donna. Hey, Happy New Year to everybody. Merry Christmas, a little belated to everyone. And the University of Georgia Bulldogs are going to the national championship game. Woohoo!
And only after we decide to watch one football game did we realize we don't even have ESPN on
ESPN.
basic DirecTV.
Not that we would want ESPN. Quite frankly, I think it's just absolutely appalling.
But I went to college with Bob Lee. He's one of the originals, and he's a sweetheart.
Whoopty.
And I did get to see him. He's put on a few pounds since I saw him.
Oh, I'm sure he appreciated you saying that, Donna. Let me ask all of the listeners, how many of you put on a few pounds over the Christmas holidays?
I did. I put on 5. I put on 10 last time I went to New Jersey.
What did I do, Donna?
You actually know how to control your weight, even though nobody pigs out like you do. All you did was eat lasagna and meatballs the entire week. Balls.
How do you spell that?
You're in New Jersey.
How do you spell it?
BAWLS.
That's right.
And we walked, folks. This might be why you did not
But if I
gain
lost
the
the
poundage.
weight walking what you're about to talk about, why didn't you?
Because I only gained 5 pounds this time instead of 10 last time we went to New Jersey. But you wear the added weight very well. Well, I try. But seriously, it was great to go back up.
I couldn't notice. If you didn't get on the scale and go, come here, Don, look at this.
No, I didn't tell you to do that. I told you what it was. I won't let you look at the number.
Like you have something to hide from me.
But we got into Manhattan. We got to Ground Zero. My son got stuck in traffic on a broken New Jersey turnpike. So nothing's really changed since I did traffic there. He had to turn around and go take New Jersey Transit in.
Took him, 3 hours to get into the city?
It took him about 4.5. Took him 3.5 sitting on the turnpike going nowhere. So nothing's changed.
Nothing has
absolutely changed. And then the GPS takes us as we're driving in through Staten Island.
How do you
because
say
I
that
guess,
if you're from up there?
What,
Staten
the GPS?
Island.
Staten Island. Staten Island. We went through the Gotham's Bridge. We went into the Bayonne Bridge. We went over the Outer Bridge crossing. We went to Staten Island.
O-I-L-A-N-D, Oiland.
I really hate that accent. It drives me nuts. And when I used to live in Colts Neck, right on the other side of the Outer Bridge crossing, everybody talked like this. So then I go into Fox, and I'd have to make sure I didn't talk like this, because then I'd lose my job.
Then you would not be able to drink any coffee.
I could drink plenty of coffee. There's plenty of bodegas around.
Yeah, but if you lost your job, you wouldn't be able to drink coffee.
I can drink coffee whether I work or not. Especially when you live in Jersey, in New York.
What do they give it to you? Panhandlers get free coffee?
No, but
hey,
it was great
panhandlers do make about $500 a day up there, though.
Oh my gosh! I know the squeegee guys, before Rudy Giuliani got rid of them, made about $300 a day. Not to mention all the freebies they're getting from the state. But we did get to go to Ground Zero, and I had never seen the Freedom Tower. That was very, you don't
like the Freedom Tower, and neither do I.
I think the Freedom Tower is ugly. I'm sorry. It's ugly. It's tapered. The thing is, the World Trade Centers were a work of architecture. To go straight up for that many floors was amazing, let alone having 2 of them. But, what can you say about that?
Well, I got to tell you, standing at the footprint reflecting pools.
Yeah, I got a lump in my throat on that one.
Pretty
big
moving.
time. And it was 12 degrees.
Anyway, what Donna was trying to talk about before she sidetracked herself was that on the 27th, I believe it was, we went into Manhattan. And the intent was to eventually go to one of our favorite Italian restaurants. And what's
Fiorello's,
the name?
as in LaGuardia. If you didn't know, folks, Fiorello LaGuardia was a former mayor of New York. So hence we have LaGuardia Airport and Cafe Fiorello.
Now, Cafe Fiorella is at 63rd Street
And Broadway. Like,
it's right
by
across
Lincoln
from
Center.
the Lincoln Center. We get on a train at the
Freedom Tower, the World Trade Center.
Yeah, which
that would
is
be the
still
number one.
WTC.
World Trade Center. It says
that's
WTC.
That's what it still says on the subway.
Yeah.
And we ride up to 34th because Donna wanted to look in the windows at Macy's.
Right.
Now, there's a couple of things that you people need to understand. We were standing on a very crowded intersection, street corner.
34th Street.
34th and 6th.
Whatever. Yeah. No, 7th.
Okay.
8th. Whatever.
No, we didn't go as far as the 8th. Here's the thing. There were more people on our particular street corner that we were standing on than live in our hometown.
Probably more on the corner. I think it was 7th
There
Avenue.
were more on the corner of 34th and 7th. Just our corner. You know, we're not talking about all of them that are milling around on the sidewalk and all of the other three corners of this thing. Just the corner we were standing on had more people standing there with us than reside in the 30170 zip code. It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. We could not get out of there fast enough.
There's so many people, though, it keeps you warm while you're walking around.
True. But here's the thing. We then decided Donna wanted to go see these red balls next to the Fox News channel at the Chase building.
They look like Christmas balls.
They're big Christmas red
It's
balls.
like in a little reflecting
like
pool
8 of them
area.
in a pile.
Fountain right next to the
Yeah.
Fox News channel. So we walk over one block.
So we took a picture of Donna in front of the red balls.
Yeah, in front of the balls.
And then she goes, hey, let's go over and see the tree.
Well, first we went through Times Square. Then we
Yes.
went over to 6th Avenue, walked past Fox and past the balls.
Right. And then she goes, hey, let's go check out the tree.
Which is up by Radio City, another
Which
block up and a block over.
Is like walking into 8 million people all going to look at this tree. Okay? So we get in this and we're just like, I mean...
You took a picture of the tree. You didn't even take a picture of me in front of it. It was just like, just take the tree and let's get the hell out of here.
So we go look at the tree. Then we decide, what the heck, we'll just walk up to
63rd
the restaurant.
Street.
Now, you got to remember that we started walking at 34th and we stopped walking at 63rd. So that's 29 blocks.
And we went 2 blocks over and 2 blocks back.
It was 1.9 miles of walking. I'm in
12
cowboy
degrees.
boots. Donna's in Uggs. And it was like, what, 18 degrees out? 20 degrees,
Yeah,
maybe?
It was maybe 18.
All right.
But that's why you didn't gain any weight.
Not smart, ladies and gentlemen. Not smart. No S frio.
It was extremely frio, actually. Mucho frio.
Hey, before we get into anything else, ladies and gentlemen, Talk America Radio is our digital flagship network, found at talkamericaradio.us. Looking for a fantastic 2018 with Talk America Radio and Ron Phillips. We've also got some great terrestrial stations that back us and support us and air our programs. WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM serving South Georgia. WJHC Talk 107.5 FM serving North Florida. And WLBB News Talk 1330 AM 106.3 FM serving West Georgia and East Alabama. We are indebted to all of you that listen on the digital network as well as our terrestrial affiliates.
We need to stress 106.3 FM WLBB. That's new. A lot of folks don't know that.
It's a pretty big monster there, Donna.
Well, 1330 AM is nice, but folks, if you switch over to 106.3, you'll hear it clear as day. You'll hear it a lot farther.
Like all the way to Douglasville
Yeah.
and almost down to LaGrange. I mean, it's a powerhouse, ladies and
So
gentlemen.
it's very cool that they're expanding 106.3 FM WLBB.
Hey, Donna.
Yo.
Hey,
Yo.
how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. You know, there's something I want to talk about you don't know anything about.
What's that?
Okay? You know, we got this new thing going on here. It's called Ask Donna Fiducia. Okay? And all you got to do, ladies and gentlemen, is send an email to cowboylogicradio@gmail.com. cowboylogicradio@gmail.com. Send an email in, as some people have already done, and you can ask Donna Fiducia a question.
Uh-oh.
I have the
Is
first...
this like Stump Donna?
Well, I don't know.
Don't ask me about traffic anymore, because I tried to go into the Holland Tunnel after flying for traffic for how many years, and I ended up going through Staten Island.
I picked three. People are always writing in, Donna, asking you things and asking things of you, and it's like I don't even exist.
Yes, you do.
Not in these emails, I don't.
Okay.
Nobody asks Don Neuen anything. All right, it's all Donna Fiducia. So I picked three of them, Donna. Three.
Three of them. He puts up 4 fingers, folks.
All right, here we go. First
Must
question.
be public education.
Here we go, Donna. Here's first question. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I am not announcing who asked the question. I'm not going to discuss that. We're just going to read the questions. So anytime
And
you've got a question...
you haven't told me these.
I haven't told you any of these yet. This is I've been keeping this
kind
from
of
you.
nervous about this.
I'm not going to put you on the real hot seat.
Okay.
But ladies and gentlemen, cowboylogicradio@gmail.com. Send in your questions and we'll read them on the air to Donna and she can answer them.
The first one is, what was Howard Stern really like?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Here we go. How long were you at Fox News, and what did you wear under the news desk?
About 7.5 years, from the end of 1999 through most of 2007. And under the news desk, when I was not doing live hours like what you see Eric Sean doing on Saturday and Sunday mornings with the house call, which was my idea, folks, by the way, the Sunday morning house call. Anyhow, I would wear, in fact, most of this time when I did wear a dress, obviously you'd see that because that would be when we'd be doing the live hours. But when I was behind the desk, I had jeans on because it was freezing cold. And especially when I worked overnights toward the end, it was freezing cold. They wouldn't put any heat on in the basement of that building. I guess they figured since we're underground that it's going to be warm, and it wasn't. So then I would take packing blankets that used
like U-Haul.
Like a U-Haul packing blanket, these little quilt-like looking things that have like a burlap rough edge on them. No, they're not, but they're a little bit. Anyhow, and they would be wrapped around some of the equipment in the studio, pretty much to keep that warm too, and to keep cameras from rolling around. I would actually wrap my lap up in those moving blankets because it was so darn cold, but you didn't see that below the desk.
Okay, very good answer, Donna.
Okay, so that was an easy one.
Yeah, question number 2. And this is somebody that obviously has been on Facebook recently. I saw your riding boots on Facebook. What size shoe do you wear?
7.5. And darn it, those boots were fitted for me by Bev Walters of Bevel's. May he rest in peace. The greatest riding shop in the world is Bevel's, although you do need to bring 5 wallets when you go there. That is in Peapack, Gladstone area of New Jersey. It's still there. But when Bev Walter was alive, he fitted me for those boots. And they really don't have a size because you put your foot down on a piece of cardboard and they trace around it. But I'm about a 7.5 and I can still fit in those boots, and they are 45 years old.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. CelebrityFeet.com. Donna Fiducia wears a 7.5. All right, last question. Number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your favorite news anchor of all time?
Ooh, wow. Well, I would have to say maybe Walter Cronkite, even though he was a commie lib. You never knew it. He was very professional. But right now, if I had to pick somebody that's on the air right now, I would pick Liz Wheeler of One America News. She's on at 9 o'clock opposite my friend Sean Hannity now. When Sean was on at 10, I used to be able to flip between the two of them. But now I'm sort of in a quandary here because Liz Wheeler, to me, is the most phenomenal up-and-coming really news anchor at this point on One America News. It's too bad more people can't get her, but she's phenomenal. Mark my words, I wish I was her agent.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The first 3 questions that were asked in the news segment that we're going to be doing, Ask Donna Fiducia. And those answers were jeans, 7.5, and Walter Cronkite / Liz Wheeler.
Yeah, Walter Cronkite was a commie lib, but at least you didn't know it. All right, and that's
Donna,
the way it should be. And that's the way it is.
Now,
Yes.
We need to tell everybody, for those of you that were not following with great attention our trip up to New Jersey, It was awfully special because after what we ended up doing, Donna, well, you know this, you were with me.
Yeah, I think
Ladies and gentlemen, what we ended up doing was we left the farm early morning on December 24th. And we took off and we drove up just outside of Richmond, Virginia. And why did we do that, Donna?
Because a certain person by the name of Kathleen Willley lives outside Richmond, Virginia. And we had the pleasure of going up and spending Christmas Day with her and Christmas Eve. Yeah, we've actually found a Chinese restaurant that was open in Richmond.
The only thing that's open on Christmas Eve and Christmas, Chinese.
We broke bread with all the Jewish people that basically go to Chinese restaurants on Christmas Eve. But what a great lady she is. And you know what? It's just ridiculously disgusting what happened to her with Bill Clinton. If you don't know, folks, look it up. We actually spoke to Juanita Broderick, who was, again, another person who was raped by Bill Clinton. Kathleen was lucky to get out of the Oval Office, basically unscathed, but certainly shaken up.
Milwee as well.
Yeah, and she's wonderful. But, well, and Kathleen has kind of helped Leslie come forward. She was one of the few that really never came forward, and she was horribly attacked by Bill Clinton. And this is what is so ridiculous, is how the left embraces Hillary Clinton now. Oh, we got to have a woman in there, but totally does not care what her husband did, which is the ultimate affront to women and women's rights. I'm sorry. And sexual harassment. You know, there's just, you can't have it both ways. I want to know where Gloria Allred is right now, and her daughter.
Haven't heard a peep out of her
what happened
since Lisa Bloom. Her daughter, which nobody in the news mentioned.
Yeah, not even
Lisa
Hannity.
Bloom
What's the deal with that?
Is Gloria Allred's daughter.
And Lisa Bloom is the one that it finally got found out, actually tried to pay some women to come forward and say Donald Trump sexually molested them and assorted other things. And all of a sudden it didn't happen. All right, so, you know, the problem is this is getting to be guilty until proven innocent. You know, I mean, they're even trying to say that, oh, well, maybe Al Franken ought to stay in the Senate. No, I don't think so. You got pictures. Hello? Come on.
Hey, I don't care whether they're on the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle.
But you're not guilty.
They need to be rooted out, and they need to be exposed. And if they need to be prosecuted, prosecute them. If they need to be extinguished from their position, do that. But you know what? They should not receive a penny of pension.
No, and I'll tell you what, I think Roy Moore ought to sue the butt off of Gloria Allred at this point, unless she can come forward with this stuff, because he lost a Senate seat and Alabama lost a voice that they wanted. All right. Now, I know this jerk who's in there has only got a couple years, and chances are they'll put another conservative Republican back in there. But the damage is done. The damage has been done. She's done it before. She's done it over and over again. It hasn't worked on Donald Trump, but it's worked on everybody else. And I'm so sick of it. And her daughter, again, is Lisa Bloom. Look it up, folks. This is ridiculous.
Nobody talked about it.
No.
Nobody talked about it.
Well, because they got what they wanted. And we knew that was going to happen.
Yep. They sure did.
Sickening.
So at any rate, we got to spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with Kathleen Willley. It was absolutely amazing. And we're going to have her coming on the show here at the bottom of the hour. So make sure you stay tuned for that, because it's a riveting story if you have not ever heard it.
And we are going to...
But what did we give Kathleen for Christmas? What was the Christmas gift?
I gave her some of my sketty and balls and my sauce.
And what did she do?
She actually posted a picture of him and say she liked my sketty and balls and sauce.
But she's so little that was probably almost a month's worth of food for her.
So it'll hold her over.
Because she's like tiny teeny.
It'll hold her over to the South Carolina Tea Party Convention, because we've talked her into showing up for that.
Yep, she's going to be down there with us. Ladies and gentlemen, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention 2018, January 20th. Through the 22nd. Donna and I will be there. We'll have, you've got the whole list there, but our buddy Buzz Patterson's going to be there. Yep. Dr. Peter Vincent Pry will be there.
And we're going to be talking to him about EMPs at the top of the hour. He is the world's foremost authority on EMPs. It's scary, really scary.
At least in our opinion he is, and that's all that matters is our opinion, right?
Evan Sayet, who is a Republican comedian.
Say it isn't so.
Yeah, it's true. Gordon Chang. Mr. Asia himself. He knows everything that's going on.
Major General Paul Vallely.
Yep. And this is just, the tip of the iceberg. Tom Fitton Judicial Watch.
Yeah.
He's going to be there. How cool is that? Corey Lewandowski.
Yeah.
Currently serves as president and CEO of Lewandowski Strategic Advisors, LLC.
That's
but he's still
easy
very
for you
close.
to say, Donna.
He's still very close to
Admiral Ace Lyons.
right,
Did you mention him?
Right. No, I didn't. You just did. But Corey Lewandowski is
Donna
still very close to
Fiducia.
Trump. Yeah, I'm going to be there.
And the guy, that guy.
And you, Don Neuen, will be there as well. In fact, hopefully we'll be able to really talk with people during the course of the second day. That's Sunday. We're going to try to MC that. We're still in the process of talking to Joe Dugan about exactly what we need to do as far as that is concerned, but I'm really looking forward to that.
You know, whenever
Anne-Marie
I write
Morell,
Joe Dugan an email, I start off with, "Hey, Joe."
anyhow,
For those of
Anne-Marie
millennials
Morell,
that are listening, that's from a Jimi Hendrix song.
look up Jimi Hendrix. She is the of politichicks.com. Just a whole bunch of people that
Suzanne Shattuck.
yes, and she has a show on our network as well. And so she will be there. How cool is that? Just a bunch of people. It's just Kevin Jackson's going to be there.
Basically, this is the
We met
Talk
him last
America
time.
Radio host and guest convention.
Trevor Loudon.
Trevor
our
Loudon
good
will
buddy
be there.
Trevor Loudon's going to be there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yep. So, I mean, this is just going to be a lot of fun. If you can, go to South Carolina Tea Party Coalition.com. You'll get all the information there. It's the 6th anniversary convention, and the whole topic is President Donald J. Trump's contract with the American voter. He's going to hold the feet to the fire on this one, and we're going to try to help him too. By the way, Trump is already at it, by the way, tweeting that Uma Abedin needs to go to jail, so I love it.
Well, we
Because
all agree with that.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, honey.
Hey, you
got
know,
your hand up?
Danny Hamilton, president and owner of Star Coaches, is going to be there with the Trump bus, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Our famed Trump bus will be at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention 2018, January 20 through 22. Back to you, Donna.
Yes, so looking forward to that. Again, go to South Carolina Tea Party Coalition.com.
I
Don
think
and I will
Steve
be there.
Braddock should be there. Oh, Scott James will be there.
Scott James is going to be there. We got a whole radio row, so we'll be talking to people on our radio shows as well, various radio shows on the network. One America
Denise
News.
Simon might show up.
She better. One America News, the aforementioned One America News Network will be there, but I'm sure
And we'll show
Liz
them how to do
Wheeler won't
things.
be there, unfortunately, because she lives in San Diego. But
She might be there.
She might.
She
we'll
might.
see. We'll see.
She might. Who we got coming up, Donna?
We will be talking to Kathleen Willie, and again, she will be at the South Carolina Tea Party Convention, and at the top of the hour, for the entire hour, talking EMPs with Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. It's all coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
And I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen.
That's the fourth one so far of 2018.
We'll be right back.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance. Yes, when cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you these two 24/7 streams of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. Talk America Radio is a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. Please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. You can contribute monthly or send us a one-time amount. We'll put it to good use continuing to share the American voice. Thank you.
Welcome to Myrtle Beach, one of the most beautiful strands of sand on the East Coast. My name is Joe Dugan, and I'm the founder and executive producer of the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention. This is our 6th anniversary this year, and we've gone to a new resort, the Crown Reef, to enable more people to come, enjoy our conference, and the beautiful weather here in Myrtle Beach. This year, I can promise you, although we have had outstanding conferences in the past, this convention will be our best ever. The theme for our convention will be President Trump's contract with the American people. It's the contract that you, the people, voted for the president to uphold. We will sing the praises of those who have upheld it and call out those who are standing in its way as he tries to make America great again. So come down, hear it firsthand. Our speakers are down here for 2 days. They want to meet you. We have a huge radio row. They want to interview you. We want to hear from you, folks, and we will give you some ideas to take home with you and spread throughout your neighborhoods. Mark your calendars now. It's an easy date to remember. It starts January 20th, just 1 year to the day from President Trump's inauguration, and we run from the 20th to the 22nd. Go to our website, SouthCarolinaTeaPartyCoalition.com. You can look at all the speakers that we're going to have this year, as well as look at speakers that we've had in past years. We're looking forward to seeing you all, folks, and please say a personal hello when you stop down here at our convention.
Hurry! Last year's event was near sellout, and this year's will be bigger than ever. So don't wait until it's too late. Book your room and convention package now. Go to SouthCarolinaTeaPartyCoalition.com. Excellent sponsorship opportunities are still available, so you can reach and equip the grassroots in our large exhibit hall and meeting rooms. Whether you wish to host an intimate meet and greet, a press conference, or a book signing, we have the space for you. This event will draw national media again this year. There's no better event for energizing and equipping the conservative grassroots than the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention on Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Go to SouthCarolinaTeaPartyCoalition.com. Be there.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey everybody, they're back on again!
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Don NEUEN. Let me be the first to welcome you back to the Big Cowboy Logic Radio Show. This show is absolutely riveting, Donna. I am riveted, Donna, and I don't mean the kind of metal thing where you press a metal rivet into the side of a ship. I do not mean that. I mean riveting as in spellbinding and mind-numbing, and it's about to get even more. Why, Donna? Because we've got one of our heroes on here with us right now.
That would be Kathleen WILLEY. Kathleen WILLEY, everybody knows. Well, you know, it's already been a year since we saw her and Juanita Broderick and why am I drawing a blank here?
Paula Jones.
In front of right in the front row, Kathleen. It was priceless. In front of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump
and Bill and Chelsea
and Bill and Chelsea.
Bill.
Yeah, that was pretty darn
good. What a stellar moment for you and for us.
No idea. The look of sheer terror on his face was almost, and I say almost worse, the 20 years of trauma and terror that I and the other women lived through.
Now, this was the second presidential debate, am I correct? Or was it the third
October
one?
9th, 2016.
It was the second one.
Okay, second one. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, that somehow must have had your head in the sand, during the second, I believe it was the second, presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump pulled all of the aces out of the deck and escorted them into the arena Well, previous to that, prior to that, you guys were at a press conference, and you had no idea why you were going into this. But then you were placed, I believe, on the second row, right behind the Trump family, for the entire squirming, uncomfortable moment for both Bill, Hillary, and if Chelsea has a conscience or any type of a soul, probably her as well.
The way I see it...
she was looking pretty shell-shocked herself.
Good. But the way I see it, Kathleen, this obviously is a good turnabout, is fair play to me. Because they have done this to you for decades. You accused Bill Clinton of basically sexually molesting you. Assaulting you. And he got away with it, and Hillary called you and Juanita and Paula Jones bimbo eruptions, among other things. And she did everything she could.
Bimbo eruptions, you name it. Yeah.
Yep. Now we have...
Well, we call you our sister, Kathleen Willie. It doesn't get any closer than that.
No, it doesn't.
Thank you.
And the thing is, through the decades, you mentioned that the Clintons had their own hitmen. Paul Begala, Lanny Davis, James Carville, people who basically...
Sid Blumenthal, who was the worst of them, the worst. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they tried
Terry McAuliffe.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you're a Democrat, it's okay. Now let's do... a Harvey Weinstein.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. Before we get into Numbnut Weinstein, I think we need to kind of set the stage, because the last time that we had Kathleen on was a while back. I'm thinking right back after the presidential debate. But Kathleen, you were a lifelong Democrat. You were a huge Democrat fundraiser and supporter for the state of Virginia. You had very close ties with the Democrat Party. You had very close ties with the Clinton White House, and you raised a ton of money for the Clintons as well as other Democrat politicians. And there was a horrific weekend and week following in your life that took place while Bill Clinton was in office. And if you don't mind, I don't think we need to take up a great part of this interview, but I feel like it's important to set the foundation for the listener here. Let's go back to that terrible Thanksgiving weekend and explain to the listeners why you have become a target of the Clintons.
Thanksgiving weekend of 1993, my children were home. My son brought a friend. We were all together for for Thanksgiving. And it was at that point when my husband finally sat down and told my children a little bit about what had been going on financially. And he was in a lot of trouble. And so I said to my family, I am going to go to the White House on Monday, and I'm going to ask for a job, because I can't volunteer anymore. I've got to get a paying job. So I went to the White House. I asked for a few minutes with the president. I was surprised to get it, but I did. And I went in to see him in the Oval Office. And at that point, I'd been trying to reach my husband all day and hadn't been able to. And I was upset, and I was trying hard not to cry, but it wasn't easy. And he said, well, why don't you come back into that? I've got a small little kitchen in the back, and why don't you come back and I'll fix you a cup of coffee? It looks like you need one. And I said, well, it's okay. I didn't think anything of it. And so he said, well, let's go into my private little study here where we can have more privacy. And I thought, well, don't we have enough privacy in the Oval Office? But, I didn't think anything of it. As I learned later, that was his little lair for his and Monica's tryst. And so he sat down on a chair, or the end of a sofa, I think, and I stood in the doorway, and I just started telling him what was going on, and, that my volunteer days were over, and, I was worried about my husband, hadn't been able to reach him all day, and, the first thing I needed to do was get on the next train home and try to find him, but in the meantime, I have to have a paying job. And so And he sat there and looked all concerned and everything. So I kept saying, I don't want to take up all your time because they fit me in. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. And don't worry about that. And I went out into this little hall that goes back into the Oval Office. And he either took my coffee cup and put it down on the table, or I put it down on the table. And the next thing I knew, he had me, cornered, and he was all over me. And I just kept thinking to myself, what is he doing? I was so shocked, and I kept thinking, what is he doing? And he's just whispering in my ear, and very inappropriate behavior. And I just thought, how am I going to gracefully get out of this? And because the thought occurred to me, well, I could slap him, or I could give him the knee, or I could do something. But then I said, well, the Secret Service is outside. They're going to come swarming in here, if I start screaming, and God knows what's going to happen to me next. So I just, there was one brief moment in time when his assistant, Andrew Friendly, started banging on the door and saying, on the Oval Office door that went back into there, and kept saying, Mr. President, you've got people waiting for you out here. There are people waiting for it. And he never said a word. And I kept saying, well, you got people waiting for you out there. I've got to go. You've got to go. And it didn't faze him in the slightest. And, he just kept on. And then Andrew banged on the door again. And it was at that moment, that was my moment of escape. And I got out of there. And he followed me and went and sat behind his desk, and I walked across the Oval Office to the door, and I kept thinking to myself, who in the name of God is on the other side of the door? I don't want to see them. I was trying to put myself together, and of course it was Lloyd Benson and Leon Panetta and Laura Tyson, and I just thought, holy God, I don't need this, and I just raced out of there. And that was that.
Kathleen, Willie, there was also...
It seemed like an eternity. Probably wasn't all that long.
There was also a moment when we've had you on as a guest in the past that you mentioned a very troubling question, or statement, I should say, that Bill Clinton said to you. And he went either right when you came in to the Oval Office or shortly thereafter, in which he said, hey, I'm really sorry to hear about your husband. And you didn't know what he was talking about. Give the listener a little bit of a foundation for that.
I didn't. I was in such a state of shock that I didn't remember it first. And then I called my best friend after I got home. She lived in Florida, and I told her what had happened. And he said, what? And I said, well, he said, I'm sorry to hear about what's happened to your husband. Well, at that point, nobody knew what happened to my husband. I mean, he committed suicide that afternoon, but they didn't find his body till the next day.
Bill
now,
Clinton
what was that all
happened.
about?
Bill Clinton knew what happened.
Uh-huh.
I just can't imagine what you're going through. And then the decades of abuse that followed, and terror, sheer terror that he put you and your family through.
Yep.
Now
he really did.
Let's kind of...
It was just one thing after the other.
Let's move away a little bit from Bill Clinton to someone that, based on the conversations that we've had with you and the conversations we've had with former Secret Service, is quite possibly even more vile than Bill Clinton, and that's Hillary Clinton. In all of your time of working with the Clintons, what was the impression, and what are your memories of Hillary Clinton like?
She was aloof. She was rude. She was arrogant. She was pretentious. You weren't allowed to look at her if you crossed her in the hall, like she was some kind of queen. I really saw no sign of any kind of empathy or sympathy for any other people whatsoever, either in the White House or people who had suffered through national disasters. She just doesn't have it in her.
Can you imagine if this was president? If it was president?
No. I don't
mean,
even want to think about it.
I cannot imagine. And thank God.
I can't either.
And thank God, really, Kathleen, Willie, that Trump is in there and he had the wherewithal to bring you and Paula and Juanita, and the people who were Clinton victims, for a better way of saying it.
Oh, well, that's exactly what they were.
And it's just mind-boggling.
But not only were they were victims of Bill Clinton, but in my opinion, and I think you'll agree with me, Kathleen, you guys were victims of Hillary Clinton as well.
Yep.
Oh, or even worse. I've often asked my questions, and with all due respect to rape victims out there and Juanita and other women, who's worse, the rapist or the enabler?
Yeah. Okay, so this brings me to Harvey Weinstein. Okay, in this interview that he's doing, I don't even know who the interviewer is. Who is this?
He's some Brit.
Okay.
And I have no idea what channel or network or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
I know what you're talking about.
It's a profound interview because it really, unless you are just infatuated with Hillary Clinton, you watch this interview and go,
what is wrong with this person?
What an idiot.
Yeah.
What a wrong individual. What a troubled individual. I mean, that's what I got out of it.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
Obviously, most of the media is in the tank for Hillary Clinton. So this guy asks her a question about Harvey Weinstein.
What was your reaction when you first read those allegations?
I was shocked and appalled because I've known him through politics, as many Democrats have. He's been a supporter.
Yeah.
He's been a funder, and, for all of us, for Obama, for me, for people who've run for office in the United States. This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated anywhere, whether it's in entertainment, politics. After all, we have someone admitting to being a sexual assaulter in the Oval Office. There has to be a recognition that we must stand against this kind of, action that is so sexist and misogynistic.
Since when is he a sexual assaulter?
I thought you was talking about Bill.
Yeah, of course I did, but then I realized he's not a sexual assaulter.
And he admitted. She says he admitted it.
Price.
She says he admitted it.
Now I went to the University of Tennessee, so they didn't teach us words that had more than 6 or 7 letters in it. But I never heard of the word misogynistic until like 2 years ago.
Yeah, now it's all you hear.
How about you, Kathleen? Have you ever heard that word before?
No.
Okay.
It means strongly prejudiced against women. I had to actually look it up when it kept being said all the time.
That is so wrong. That is so wrong. I mean, the first person who was a foreman on his very first building was a woman.
I know.
It was a woman, a young woman, who did a fabulous job.
His top advisor is a woman.
Look at Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah.
They have to attack her.
His press secretary is a woman.
Yeah. Now, yeah.
Exactly.
The head of the State Department, the State Department spokesman, is a woman.
Well,
right.
Heather Nauert. I worked with her.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
this guy clearly does not have a problem with women.
No, he doesn't.
And like I would say, probably about 90% of the men that are walking around on the planet have engaged in what we consider to be locker room talk, and it's usually little smart comments to overcompensate for a lack of genitalia. So, but back to you, Donna.
Well, the thing is, the Billy Bush tape they're referring to was, like you say, locker room talk.
Locker room talk.
That's how Kim Jong-un says it.
Those are words.
Rocker loom talk.
The point is,
Those were words, not actions.
And the thing is,
And there's a big damn difference, right,
and
Kathleen?
Hillary has
You
to
got
bring,
that right.
And Hillary,
You got that right.
Hillary has to bring Trump in.
I'll never forget when we went into the spin room after the debate, and the first woman who got her microphone, under my nose was a young girl, and she looked at me and she said, "Don't you feel used?" And I looked at her. I shot her a look, and I said, "No, nobody uses me. I am not. If I felt used, I would not be here. If I'd had the presence of, well, isn't this old news? And if I'd had the presence of mind, but she was too far away, I should have gone and grabbed Juanita and said, here, ask Juanita that question."
But what really got me was how all of these starlets, many of which loved Harvey Weinstein until a couple weeks ago, were so appalled at what Donald Trump said, and they
Harvey in a strange
him
way,
all over the place. Yeah.
Harvey in a very.
They didn't touch Bill Clinton. Look at the nasty, vile comments that came out of Ashley Judd. I mean, she's a vile woman.
Yep. But that's okay.
Well, she also can't
listen,
keep her clothes
you'll never
on.
convince me. You will never, ever, ever convince me that Meryl Streep didn't know what was going on. I'm sorry.
But they all
Jane
did.
Fonda.
They all did.
So the next...
And hold on a second. Let's go back to Ashley Judd. Ashley Judd doesn't have any credibility with me because she can't do a movie without showing her boobs.
She's a nasty woman.
So now her mother, I have a lot of respect for, Naomi. But Ashley can't do a movie without taking her clothes off.
I didn't even know that. I thought Naomi would have been embarrassed.
All right, so what's the next soundbite we got here?
She probably was.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, let's let him just ask the next question.
And this depends upon women coming forward and having the courage to come forward.
Right.
And yet in your book, the three women brought onto stage by Trump attacking your husband, and you kind of dismissed them. Was that the right thing to do? Are you sure about that?
Well, yes, because that had all been litigated. I mean, that was the subject of a huge, investigation, as you might recall, in the late 90s, and there were conclusions drawn, and that was clearly in the past.
Given what Donald Trump has said and the way he's behaved, do you think he hates women?
I think he has a very narrow view of what a woman should be and is very focused on keeping women in their place. And so the way he treated Angela Merkel, for example, when she came to the Oval Office, where he would not shake her hand, where he would not look at her, compared with the way he treated Theresa May, whose hand he grabbed.
It was a grab, wasn't it?
Yes. I mean, so there's two kind of women. Women that I like and I can work with, and women that I'm afraid of or that would challenge me. I mean, that seems quite, sexist, if not misogynistic to me.
Well, what do you think about that? I can't imagine what's going through your mind.
I wouldn't shake hands with Angela Merkel either.
All right, but...
I mean...
These were litigated.
He doesn't respect Angela Merkel.
They're grabbing at straws here. Anything that they can find. Anything that they can find. What I want to start hearing next is all the executives at NBC and ABC and CBS who've been molesting and sexual harassing and raping young women. Yeah. That's what I want to start hearing.
I agree.
I think NBC is running scared.
Well, absolutely, because they're in cahoots with the Weinstein Company for many projects and for decades.
They've got different. They co-direct different shows and movies, and I mean they're in it up to their necks.
All right, so Kathleen, when they said this was litigated, what happened with you and Juanita and Paula, that was
this was all litigated. This is all in the past. This is something that we don't need to dredge up again.
When is somebody gonna call her on these lies? Nothing was mitigated. Paula Jones's case, they filed a lawsuit, but it was settled. It wasn't mitigated. I wish mine had been mitigated. I might have gotten a settlement. I know Juanita's wasn't mitigated. I know Leslie Millie's wasn't litigated, and we all know how Kathy Shelton's was mitigated.
Yep. I mean, it's just what gets me is the double standard. You have a D behind your name, you're okay. You have an R.
You have a D behind your name, you can lie, you can commit crimes, you can have corruption to the nth degree, you can violate human beings' rights, you can kill people, and you can get away with it.
And
all you got to do is deny it on television. And the media goes, hey, yeah, you're right. You didn't do anything wrong.
But
nobody questions it. No. Nobody calls her on it. When's it going to happen? She has everything set up for these book tours. Nobody can ask her a question. Nobody can really get close to her. If you get close to her and ask her a question, you get yanked off the stage. Everything is all everything is all taken care of ahead of time.
That's the way it was when she was a senator too.
Listen, the only people that are buying her books are conservative talk show hosts that are using it to absolutely tear her to shreds.
Or George Soros is buying a bunch of them to make it look better.
And Amazon, they're buying them all up so they can say that it's number one.
Exactly.
And you have a book that was on, is it still available on Amazon.com? Your book, Kathleen?
Uh-huh.
Okay, Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton, by Kathleen WILLEY, folks, and you can read all about what Bill and Hill are really like. And the fact that Harvey Weinstein's not getting away with it because he's so egregious, they just couldn't ignore it anymore.
I think Harvey Weinstein is, in a odd way, kind of hot.
You are so bad.
And that I just lied. I just lied on the air.
Oh, okay. Did you?
Yeah, really? I just lied on the air.
You can find Kathleen's book again, Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton, on Amazon.com. And your website, A Scandal a Day, you still getting some contributions on that one, I bet, huh, Kathleen?
I never got contribution.
Oh, I thought people.
Well, then you should. Starting right now, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't mean monetary contributions. I mean people, coming in with their scandals that they're talking about.
Oh, yeah. I've got lots of followers, yeah.
Exactly.
So, all right. Where's the book? Quick, Donna?
Amazon, Target, Caught in the Crosshairs of Bill and Hillary Clinton by Kathleen WILLEY, and ascandaladay.com. Read all about what Bill and Hill are really like and all the junk that goes on behind the scenes in the Democrat Party. Kathleen's seen it, been there, done that.
I'm going to say one quick thing, and we're out of time completely with Kathleen WILLEY. Kathleen, Donna and I love you like a sister, and we would absolutely fall on a sword for you.
Oh, that's so nice. I appreciate that. That means more than you know.
Well, you are a sweetheart, and we feel for you, and it took decades, but hopefully vindication is finally there.
Who we got coming up next, Donna?
All right, Kathleen, thank you so much. We'll be talking with Dr. Rhonda Morgan.
You're welcome. I enjoyed every minute of it.
All right, honey, we'll see you later. We're going to be talking after the break to Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. He is an EMP specialist, the go-to guy. In fact, he's in D.C. this over the past weekend talking to big government officials about that. Are we ready if an electromagnetic pulse hits us? I'm afraid not. Dr. Pry coming up next.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing West was really wild. Cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN, and our very special guest is Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. Now, it's been a few years since we've had Dr. Pry on, but if you don't know what an EMP is, electromagnetic pulse, and how it can affect your very life, you better listen up, because if we do get hit with an EMP, we're back into the 1880s. You're basically living like the Amish, and we are seriously unprotected, and Dr. Peter Vincent Pry is at the forefront of trying to wake up the country about this. You're chief of staff right now of the EMP Commission, and Dr. Pry will get to that in a moment. I'm very happy to say that the Trump administration seems to be looking more at this. And you are a former CIA analyst. You've addressed the Senate Armed Services Committee. You've addressed, last time we talked, a number of state legislatures on this problem as well. And 3 books that you can find in the usual spots: Blackout Wars, Apocalypse Unknown, and Electric Armageddon, to just name a few. And that pretty much sums it up. Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. It's been way too long.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, let me see. It's been a couple of years, and are we in any better shape as far as protecting the grid than we were before?
Well, we are. There has been definite progress that's been made. For example, the Congress has passed the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act just this last year, which is a huge step forward. It's one of the core recommendations that the Congressional EMP Commission made, and it creates a new national planning scenario. It directs the Department of Homeland Security to add a new national planning scenario. There's like 15 canonical national planning scenarios: earthquakes, a terrorist bomb goes off in a city, cyber attacks, chemical and biological warfare. But there was never an EMP national planning scenario, and so that kept it off the radar screen for federal, state, and local emergency planners, who basically didn't have to do anything, because the national planning scenarios drive all of our planning and preparation and resource allocation. But now that's changed. So federal, state, and local governments will have to start preparing for an EMP event, to recover from an EMP event, and to try to save our people from one. It also requires the Department of Homeland Security to reach out to the states to help them, and the states can reach out to the Department of Homeland Security and ask for help, and should get it under this. So that's enormous progress. And then at the state level, also there's a consciousness now. I mean, on a bipartisan basis, in both the Senate and the House, Democrats and Republicans are not united on much of anything, except they are united on this. Critical Infrastructure Protection Act passed unanimously, and all of the EMP efforts have enjoyed unanimous support in Congress. And a number of the states have not waited for Washington, but have launched their own legislative initiatives in Maine and Virginia, Florida, Arizona. I just came back from Texas, where Senator Bob Hall has introduced a bill to try to protect the Texas grid from EMP, and testified in support of his bill. So we're in much better shape than we were 8 years ago in terms of policy, okay, in terms of recognition of the threat, in terms of actually trying to do something about the threat. However, the sad fact is, all of these are policy victories, okay? None of them has yet. Well, in Maine and Virginia, those states, it has actually translated into actual protection of the grid. So some protection of the grid has actually begun too. However, even though these successes are very encouraging, the fact of the matter is the threat is continuing to outstrip, our preparations for it. During the same 8-year period, North Korea has become much more capable of delivering an EMP attack against us. I think we still have our head buried in the sand where Iran is concerned, where even many conservative Republicans, people who should know better, sort of go along, just accept at face value, it seems to me, the the Obama administration intelligence community position that Iran doesn't have the bomb yet. And I and others have written, including many former senior national security experts from the Reagan years and even from the Clinton administration, like Ambassador Jim Woolsey, who was the director of the CIA under Bill Clinton. We think Iran has actually had the bomb and the ability to do an EMP attack probably since 2003, and that Iran is following the example of North Korea and concealing its nuclear program from us until it becomes so advanced that it becomes irreversible, just like the situation we have today. I mean, people seem to have forgotten that all through the Clinton administration for 8 years, remember when the press was praising Bill Clinton for his agreed framework with North Korea?
I was just about to ask you that. We've got a problem with North Korea now. Exactly. We've got a problem with North Korea now, and we're going to have the same situation with Iran thanks to this multi-billion-dollar deal that Barack Obama did. And, gee, nothing gets talked about as far as that's concerned. Don had a question for you, sir.
Well, basically what I wanted to ask you, Doctor, is if you would explain, because clearly there's two major EMP threats, that of a military action by a rogue country like North Korea or Iran. But there's also the very real possibility of a solar EMP. And would you mind explaining to the listening audience the difference between those two? Which is more severe? Which is more likely? I know that either one of them could be catastrophic to us if we're not prepared for it. But would you dive into that a little bit before we start jumping into Iran and North Korea and that threat?
Certainly. We know more now about the solar EMP threat, too, than we did 8 years ago. We've learned a lot about the threat from the sun, and it's worse than even the EMP Commission had originally suspected. You asked how likely it is. It's certain. It's a certainty. It's inevitable. There will certainly be a recurrence of a Carrington-class natural EMP event. And
we're long overdue on that, are we not?
We are, and not only that, but we also now know that for a long that geomagnetic superstorms more powerful than Carrington are possible. Carrington in 1859 was just the most powerful one on record, and the electric power industry liked to think that was the maximum threat. But it's not the maximum threat, and common sense should have told us that it wasn't the maximum threat. The only reason we know about Carrington is because it also happened in 1859. It's the first time we started deploying magnetometers. But the solar system, is 5 billion years old, and the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and the notion, now Carrington was only 150 years ago, so it really kind of strains credulity that we just would have happened to have had the most powerful possible solar storm at a time when we just started taking measurements 150 years ago. So that never made sense. And now we know, because we've put up satellites since 2008 that can look at the coronal mass ejections which come out of the sun, which cause geomagnetic storms, geomagnetic superstorms. And we now know that Carrington-class coronal mass ejections and bigger ones are routine. They come out of the sun all the time. It's just we're sort of in a game of Russian roulette with the sun, and it's just a question of time before one of these things slams into us and causes another Carrington event, which would be, and what does that mean? The way this works, to talk about the physics for a moment so people will know what we're talking about. A coronal mass ejection, or sometimes in layman's terms they call it a solar flare, though that's not the proper scientific name for it. These things come out of the sunspots, on the sun, which are big holes in the magnetic fields of the sun, and they basically are like electromagnetic cannons, and a chunk of the sun will come out. It's a huge blob of ionized plasma, that's millions of degrees of temperature, and these things will be hurled out into space. And small coronal mass, relatively smaller coronal mass ejections hit the Earth every year and don't have much consequence. They cause geomagnetic storms of routine geomagnetic storms that'll cause problems with air travel and maybe some minor blackouts. Sometimes a little more serious than that. For example, there was a coronal mass ejection that caused in 1989 Hydro-Quebec storm, which blacked out half of Canada for a day, and even reached into the northern United States, caused some damage to our electric grid, including the melting of a extra high voltage transformer at the Salem nuclear plant in the United States. And these extra high voltage transformers are designed to carry 750,000 volts. Okay, 750,000 volts. You have the transformer melted in seconds. It gives you an idea of the power of the 1989 Hydro-Quebec storm, which was more than a usual. I mean, but that's not a Carrington event. Something like that is like 10% of what a Carrington event would be. If we get hit with a repeat of the Carrington event, we know that was a worldwide phenomenon. What happens is the coronal mass ejection. It's traveling 1 million miles an hour or faster. And the reason the Earth doesn't get burned to a crisp is we're surrounded by a magnetosphere, magnetic field, and this keeps the coronal mass ejection from actually reaching the Earth. But in the process of doing that, the magnetosphere gets distorted, it gets bent, and it wobbles around under the impact from the coronal mass ejection. And when it gets hit by a big enough one, like a Carrington-class coronal mass ejection, the magnetosphere everywhere goes wobbling around. And because you've got that moving magnetic field, that's what generates the electromagnetic pulse. It induces currents in wires on the Earth's surface and railroad tracks, pipelines, any large, long metal thing. In 1859, when it happened, the colonial powers had deployed telegraph systems all over the world. In China, India, in South Africa, America had deployed telegraph lines, and all over the world we had fires break out in telegraph stations. There were forced fires because the pulse was so powerful it would cause the telegraph line to burst into flames. The pulse from Carrington in 1859 was so powerful it reached down miles deep into the depths of the Atlantic Ocean and burned out the transatlantic telegraph cable, which had just been laid in 1859, and the Great Eastern had to go back and relay the cable again. Now, back in those days, electronic systems and telegraphy was not crucial to the existence of civilization in those horse and buggy days. But today it is. And today the electronics we depend upon are millions of times more vulnerable to EMP than the primitive electronics of 1859. And, if something like that happened today, it would cause the collapse of power grids all over the world. It would cause the collapse of the life-sustaining critical infrastructures that provide food and water and communications and transportation all over the world, and it would put billions of lives at risk. So some people consider the coronal mass ejection, the natural EMP threat, to be even worse than the nuclear EMP threat because it's inevitable. It will happen for sure. We're overdue for one. In fact, we were just missed by one on July 23rd, 2012. One missed us by about 3 days. That's how close we came, and so billions of lives are at risk because people can't live without these modern critical infrastructures, food and water.
Well, I think it's also safe to say that when you look at someone like North Korea or Iran, they are chump change to the sun.
Exactly.
And back in the 1800s when the Carrington event hit, very few people were actually affected by that. Many people in the United States, and I'm speaking specifically for the population of the United States at the time, but many people didn't even realize this took place. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And they knew a strange natural phenomenon was happening because the aurora borealis was so bright at night that you could read newspapers at night in London by the light of the aurora borealis. So people knew something strange had happened, but they didn't realize what it was.
And for the most part, they were able to.
The aurora borealis also showed up on the equator, which it rarely does. So the northern lights were seen in Hawaii, for example.
Wow. But for the most part, people were able to go on with their days. They were able to farm. They were able to eat and survive. Oh, yeah. And but I'm telling you, something like this happens now. There's not a person in the United States that would not be affected drastically by it. And if I'm not mistaken, something that you discussed last time, we're talking about the potential of like a 10% or less survival rate.
That's right. The Congressional EMP Commission assessed that if a nuclear EMP happened that caused a nationwide blackout, or if a nationwide blackout was caused by the sun or by any cause that deprived us of electricity for a year, that up to 9 of 10 Americans would die from starvation and disease and societal collapse. And a lot of people are, surprised at that, but it shouldn't be surprising. When you consider, that we have 320 million people in this country, and what was the ability to support a population before we had electricity? If you go back to 1910, the country wasn't really electrified until the Roosevelt administration. In 1910, we had a population of 100 million people, and those people, 75% of them were farmers, okay, and all of them were one generation removed at most from pioneer stock. So basically, you had 100 million people in 1910 who were a nation of survivalists, all right? Today, less than 2% of our population feeds the other 98%, 320 million people. Most people don't know how to survive in the wilderness on their own. Immediately, you lose the water supply. It requires vast amounts of electricity to purify and pump water. Food supply, we only have enough food to feed 320 million people for 30 days in the United States. And it will begin spoiling in 3 days, because of the emergency generators only have enough fuel to operate for 3 days. And then the food starts spoiling. How do you keep 320 million people alive with no food? How do you keep them alive with no water? And it's not like another misconception is that the EMP will basically return you to a pristine environment like in the 1880s. So that, and some people foolishly think, oh, well, in some ways that might even be good so that we could start over again in a more pristine environment. Not so. The EMP would cause an unprecedented environmental catastrophe. For example, the nuclear reactors. We have 100 nuclear reactors in this country. In 7 days, their emergency generating supplies run out. That keeps the reactor cores cool. And so in 7 days, you'd have 100 nuclear reactors going to Fukushima, spreading radioactivity over vast swaths of the United States. They happen to be co-located with most of our population. And gas pipelines would explode. You'd have firestorms in the city. All kinds of industrial facilities that rely on chemicals, processes that be toxic, poisonous clouds and chemicals dumped into streams and rivers and lakes. Most of our rivers and lakes are, even though we've had a lot of activity to purify them, it's still dangerous for us to drink that water. Likely, if you went and tried to drink from the river in your backyard, you'd probably get sick and possibly die from it. And it would be even worse in the aftermath of an EMP because the water purification plants tend to backflow when there's no electricity. So we have industrial and hospital wastes flowing back into the lakes and rivers. And we've gotten used to, the water that you drink out of your tap water, it's a 99.98% pure. That's what our bodies have become accustomed to over the generations since we've, been using the modern industrial purified water systems. That's purer than nature, okay? And from a technological point of view, that sounds like a good thing. But it means that we don't have the antibodies in our systems that our pioneer stock used to have. So we can't go back to 1880 and be drinking out of a normal stream that is as pure as Mother Nature, because we need 99.98% water. It's one of the perhaps unfortunate consequences of our advanced technology that we never gave much thought to, that if the system ever failed, we couldn't go back to living the way our ancestors did. So this is how, we come to the conclusion, and it's not hard to do when you consider the lack of food, the lack of water, the environmental consequences of an EMP, that, that 90% of the population, would likely perish as a consequence of a protracted nationwide blackout caused by EMP. And before we leave the topic of the naturally caused EMP from a solar storm versus the nuclear EMP, I do have to point out one important difference between them, because it's a lot of people, while the solar EMP, the natural EMP is worse in terms of the scale of the effects, because it would affect, if you're talking about a Carrington-class event or larger, it would affect the entire planet. And because it's inevitable, Okay, people a lot of times assume that the natural EMP is worse, and in those respects it is. But there's a characteristic about the nuclear EMP attack that Mother Nature can't do that makes it technically worse. The nuclear weapon produces something called an E1 EMP. In addition to the E3 EMP, the E3 EMP is what the natural EMP is, and it's a long wavelength phenomena. It requires a very big antenna to couple into. So it couples into railroad tracks, and power lines, pipelines, and things like that. But it won't directly couple into your automobile, for example, or the personal computer on your desk, and the small electronics. The nuclear EMP produces this E3 EMP that couples into all these long wavelengths, long antennas. But it also produces this E1 EMP, which has a very short wavelength. It's only about a half a meter wide. And it'll couple into everything that's about that dimension or smaller. So if you've got a wire on your personal computer that's longer than a half a meter, it'll couple into that and put. It's also got the way we measure the power of EMP is the volts per meter. And in the case of, for example, a super EMP weapon, which is what we think North Korea has got, it generates 200,000 volts per meter, all right? So that means that if you have a wire going into your computer that's 1 meter long, it gets 200,000 volts injected to it to a billionth of a second. Not only will it fry it out, it could actually cause the thing to explode. Think of your car. Now, the natural EMP won't directly couple into your car because your car isn't big enough for the wavelength. But a nuclear EMP will. And suppose your car, typically 4 meters long, okay? So that's 4 times 200,000. So that's 800,000 volts. It connects, it couples into the body of your car, and will seek out pathways to get into the electronics. 800,000 volts. So that's the nuclear EMP, while it won't cover the whole planet with one bomb, you can get a whole continent with one bomb. It does deeper damage. It does deeper damage than the EMP from the sun. So that it'll go in and directly destroy SCADAs, and that is supervisory control and data acquisition systems, and all these computers and microprocessors and other kinds of electronic components that are crucial to our modern society. Bottom line is that in 3 days you do end up in basically the same place. Even though your car might run for a while in the aftermath of a natural EMP, your car needs gas. And when the electric grid goes down, there won't be any gas anymore, because gas stations require electricity to run the pumps, and the pipelines require electricity for fuel to be delivered, to various gas stations and for transportation to run. So they're both existential threats to America.
Dr. Pry, hold that thought because we're going into a break, and when we come back, I want to get into what the EMP Commission is recommending and what the U.S. and we can do in the event of an EMP. We're talking with Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. He's the Chief of Staff of the EMP Commission, and he's written numerous books on this topic. It's frightening, but it's very real, and it's something we need to deal with. We'll have more coming up after the break on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey everybody, they're back on again!
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glare. Yes, back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don NEUEN, and our very special guest for this entire hour will be Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. We continue with our interview with him. He's Chief of Staff of the EMP Commission. He really is the foremost authority on electromagnetic pulses, and we got hold of you, Dr. Pry, through our good friend Frank Gaffney and Claire Lopez at the Center for Security Policy, because What you have to say needs to get out there on as many shows as possible. Dr. Pry is also the author of many books on the topic, including Blackout Wars, Apocalypse Unknown, and Electric Armageddon. Again, you can find them in all the usual spots. And Dr. Pry, just before the break, we were talking about, or we're going to talk about, what the EMP Commission is recommending and this E1 phenomenon, which is against a nuclear attack. Can you explain what the Commission feels we should be doing?
Well, hold on, Dr. Pry. Before you do that, I want to interject and interrupt something here. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you, if you didn't already do it in the last segment, get a pen and paper to where you're able to take notes, because, Dr. Pry, I'm sure you will agree with me. In my opinion, this is the single greatest threat, not only toward the United States, but toward humanity. I mean, this is the scary stuff that we talk about on this radio show, ladies and gentlemen. And Dr. Pry is the authority, hands down. We're talking to the expert, the number one guy in the entire, in this field. Take notes from what he's got to say in this last segment here, because this is terrifying. And it's how you can protect yourself against an electromagnetic pulse, if at all possible, as best as we can. All right, Dr. Pry, the commission, the E1 phenomenon against a nuclear attack, what does the commission actually recommend at this point?
Well, I would like to concur with what your co-host said to impress upon the audience that this is the biggest threat we need to worry about. It's a threat not just to the United States, but to civilization worldwide. And that is so, because we've never had a situation in history where society is basically now an electronic civilization. And we face two threat vectors, one from Mother Nature, from the sun, where in a geomagnetic superstorm, all the electronic systems, could go into blackout for a protracted period, and billions of people could be killed by a natural phenomena, which we have no way of stopping, and which is inevitable and is sure to happen. And in 2012, as I had mentioned earlier, nearly struck us. We escaped being struck by such a geomagnetic superstorm by just 3 days. And now, here we are on Easter Sunday, facing imminent threats from failed states like North Korea, who regularly threaten to attack us. We've never had a situation in history where the least successful societies on Earth, the most dysfunctional societies on Earth, like a North Korea that can't even feed its own people, yet they have the technology in their hands that with one EMP strike, they could destroy the most advanced societies on Earth. And this could be done by non-state actors too. Dystopian groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda could take down our civilization. So this is an enormous threat to us, the biggest threat that we face. And that's why I've dedicated my professional life, as have many other, very senior people, much more senior than me, like my boss, Dr. William Graham, who's chairman of the Congressional EMP Commission and had been President Reagan's science advisor and director of NASA. And he wants to be in retirement, but he won't go into retirement because he's come back from retirement to be the chairman of the EMP Commission, because he knows what a threat this is. This is, he can't afford to relax and be with his grandchildren. Certainly he has earned that right. But as long as we are vulnerable to this, he's doing what he can to stop it. Or Jim Woolsey, who was a former director of the CIA, and yet I can call Jim and he will show up to speak publicly on this, because they know what a serious threat this is, that this is the threat. Now, getting to what the Commission recommends, our core recommendation was that we protect the electric grid and other critical infrastructures against nuclear EMP attack because of all the EMP threats we've been talking about, whether it's from the sun or whether it's from non-nuclear EMP weapons. The nuclear EMP threat is the hardest to defend against because of that E1 EMP and the E3 EMP. In other words, it does the same thing that a geomagnetic superstorm would do, but it also does something even worse with this electromagnetic shock wave that it puts out, that on top of destroying very large grid systems, communication systems, and being able to couple into railroad tracks and the like, the electromagnetic shock wave that a nuclear weapon puts out, unlike the geomagnetic storm, can do things like destroy your car, so your car won't start. take out the personal computer on your desk, take out all kinds of small electronics as well. So it does much deeper damage. And if you're protected against that, it will mitigate, the worst case solar storm threat. And it will also mitigate all other threats to the grid. You could take the grid down by cyber attacks, for example. You don't need a nuclear weapon to take down the electric grid and kill most Americans. But if you're protected against a nuclear EMP attack, it will mitigate cyber threats as well. It will mitigate physical sabotage. One of the things terrorists could do, there's a handful of extra high voltage transformer substations. We know because the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission did a study, that warned that if terrorists knew which 9 out of 2,000 EHV transformer substations to attack, they could take down the whole grid for 18 months and kill 9 of 10 Americans. But if you're protected against a nuclear EMP attack, it will also take that threat off the table. And severe weather, for example, hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that can cause localized blackouts, would also be mitigated by nuclear EMP protection. And perhaps I should take a moment to explain why that is so and how that works, because people may have a difficult time imagining, well, why, when you're protecting against nuclear EMP, how does that protect you against, say, terrorists who are taking high explosives or a machine gun or something to shoot up an EHV transformer? How could hardening against EMP protect you against that? Well, this is the problem. When you make the way a cyber attack or the way a physical sabotage would work, the way it would take the grid down, is that you're not attacking all the transformers at once in the case of a cyber attack or in the case of an act of physical sabotage. To take the easiest thing to understand, suppose you blew up those 9 EHV transformer substations. The mechanism by which the whole grid gets taken out is when those transformers are gone, the energy that was going through those transformers has to go somewhere, so it gets dumped on neighboring transformers. So you're talking about, one transformer, a big transformer is carrying 750,000 volts. So you're suddenly dumping all that load, from 9 big transformers onto neighboring transformers, and it's too much. They can't handle it, and so they will go out, and their load has to go someplace. So you get a cascading failure that ends up rippling through the whole grid. And you can begin that cascading failure either by sabotage or by a cyber attack that would take out the small number of transformers to begin that process. But suppose you had protected all the transformers from EMP, nuclear EMP, by putting surge arresters on those transformers. And what a surge arrestor does is when it detects, a surge of energy, whether it's from EMP or something else, any kind of overvoltage, coming in, it cuts it off, it stops it so it doesn't get into the transformer. And so those 9 transformers that get blown up either by cyber or taken down by physical sabotage, the overvoltage that's coming out of that, when the load gets dumped, it gets stopped. It would get stopped by the surge arresters on neighboring transformers, and it would stop in its tracks the cascading failure that those attack modes depend upon. Similarly, if you look at, take an example of hurricanes. Hurricane Sandy, for example. I think you can Google it online. Somebody used their cell phone to take a picture at night from New Jersey in the middle of Hurricane Sandy because people didn't know what was going on, but there was this dramatic effect happening where there were these brilliant blue flashes all around the horizon, enormous blue flashes, and people were just in awe of them. They didn't know what it was. Well, what those were transformers blowing up, because as a hurricane knocks down the high-voltage power lines, the energy has to go somewhere. And so it backs up into the transformers and causes them to have overvoltages, and they blow up. And this is one of the things that makes it so hard to recover from a hurricane, because you're losing all these transformers that have to be replaced when they blow up like that. All kinds of transformers. However, if you had surge arresters, again, on the transformers to protect them from a nuclear EMP, there is no overvoltage, no system-generated overvoltage that could be caused by a cyber attack or by sabotage or by a hurricane that is greater, more powerful than what you'd get from a nuclear EMP. And once again, the surge arrestor would interrupt those overvoltages and stop them dead in their tracks, So you don't lose the transformers. And you don't lose the SCADAs and other electronics as well that are necessary to the grid. And this makes grid recovery much, much easier.
Dr. Pride, let me ask you a very quick question with regard to this protection. You know, in the past conversations that we've had with you, that we've had with Claire Lopez, this is the protection of our grid in the scheme of an annual budget or in the scheme of government spending is microscopic, is it not?
It is. Now you'll have there are differences over that, okay? Because, some people will claim that there are different plans out there for protecting the grid. The EMP Commission plan, the EMP Commission estimated that you could protect the national electric grid for just $2 billion. That's what we give away in foreign aid to Pakistan every year. $2 billion. So if we suspended foreign aid to Pakistan, and I don't even know why we give foreign aid to Pakistan. They're a nuclear weapon state. They hate the United States. They harbored Osama bin Laden. They could protect the Taliban. But we give them $2 billion every year in military and foreign aid. If we suspended foreign aid to Pakistan for just 1 year and spent it on the security of the American people, we could solve this problem and take an enormous step towards solving this problem by protecting the electric grid. Now there are other competing estimates. I think the EMP Commission estimate is the best and the sound estimate. But I have colleagues who I respect who would like to spend $20 billion protecting the grid, and I would support that. Too, it's just a question of how much do you need to spend. Okay, you can buy. How much security do you want to buy?
There are basically
I get asked all the time.
But
if I could,
okay.
Well, let me continue for a moment. I want to finish this thought. Because when you ask someone, well, how much does it cost to protect the electric grid from an EMP or from any phenomenon? It's not necessarily all that simple a question. To use an example, suppose someone asked you, well, how much does it cost to protect your house against fire? Okay? There's a lot of answers to that, all of them valid. You could, if your house had no protection at all, you could start by spending $20 to put a smoke alarm in your house. And if you only did that alone would greatly increase the likelihood that your family would survive. But you might want to buy even more security and buy a fire extinguisher to put in the kitchen and another one to put in the garage. You might want to apply even more security and have a sprinkler system put in the whole house. And obviously, as you increase these purchases, you're buying more and more security. So, which is ultimately a political question about how much security do you want to buy. The EMP Commission thought installing surge arresters and blocking devices in Faraday cages to protect the generators and the big HV transformers and these control centers would be good enough, and we can do that for $2 billion. Other of my colleagues, but that does depend on relying on the utilities to have contingency plans so that there are things that utilities actually have to do to bring the grid back and to protect the grid. And if they're trained to do that and they're smart enough to do that, then you can spend $2 billion.
All right, what I wanted to ask you real quick, though, you have three separate sections. You have the eastern, the western grid, and you have Texas. That $2 billion is basically what you're saying to protect those three big areas. Then smaller companies like our own here outside Atlanta, Carroll EMC, electric co-op that they have, they need to put their own surge protectors in, correct? I mean, and it can be done. What Claire Lopez told us in general for the $2 billion at least might raise your electric bill a couple dollars a month. And that's a small price to pay.
It would be less than that. Mm-hmm. The U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission estimated that it would raise the average ratepayer's annual electric bill to something like a quarter per year, to pay for that. There are more ambitious plans that like the $20 billion plan, would cost maybe a couple of bucks a year. And what the $20 billion plan does, and I'm not against the $20 billion plan. I'm not criticizing. It's a good plan too. And if society were willing to spend the $20 billion, I would advocate that. But what that does is it brings the grid up to military standards. Okay, this basically would take the human decision. You don't have to rely on the utilities knowing anything or doing anything anymore. Basically, that's a plan from one of my colleagues from Dr. George Baker, who did military hardening for the military. And the military doesn't like to trust the human factor, okay? They just want to harden things so hard that you don't have to worry about it anymore. It'll just survive no matter what, even if there's human error. So if you're spending 10 times as much, you basically don't have to rely on the utilities to know anything about EMP or do anything. It'll just survive because it's so hardened and everything has been thought through so well, in effect designed by geniuses to be used by idiots, that that basically you don't need the utilities to know anything about EMP. It'll just survive anyway.
But the technology is there. The technology is there, and why aren't they doing it?
This is the biggest no-brainer in the history of man, in my opinion. First of all, the federal government is charged with protecting the citizens of the United States. This is a no-brainer to me. Let me ask you this. Who are the lobbyists that have been preventing this from happening for decades?
Well, the big one is the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC. And they are supposed to partner with the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, called FERC, to protect the grid. The problem is that the electric power industry is the last critical infrastructure in this society which basically regulates itself. It's operating in a 19th century regulatory environment where we trust the electric power industry to regulate itself. And the U.S. FERC has no legal authorities to order the electric grid to protect itself. And NERC, while it pretends that it's a partner and that its highest priority is electric reliability and public safety, in fact, they're in effect a lobby for all the 3,000 utilities, and they basically don't want to spend money on anything. They want to keep the costs as low as possible so that they don't have to spend. And this is, an inevitable consequence of. I'm a Tea Party Republican. I don't believe in big government. I believe in the private sector. I believe in free enterprise system as the best system ever conceived of by man for delivering goods and services at the lowest possible price. And the founders all believed that as well. But the founders also understood that you can't trust the free enterprise system to provide for national security and public safety. That is why we have government. This is the role that government had. Government takes a longer view than the merchant does. When that merchant has got that dollar of profit in his hands, and he's thinking about, well, do I put this in my pocket, or do I spend it on protecting against a once-in-a-100-year geomagnetic superstorm, or the possibility of a North Korean nuclear EMP attack? He's always going to put that dollar in his pocket. He answers to his stockholders, and his view is a shorter view, and his motives. He's not coming out of a warrior culture. He's coming out of business culture. They don't think about these things the way the CIA does or the Department of Defense, which is why we have them. To provide for the common defense in the Constitution, that's not the job of the electric utilities. The common defense is supposed to be provided by the U.S. government and by our departments of defense and our intelligence communities that are organized for that. The problem is we've got this dilemma.
Well, last half hour, you said that it was we made a bit of progress at the governmental level. I believe it's Congressman McCall who is the head of that particular branch of whatever section they call it. Is that the EMP Commission for Congress? I don't even know what it is, but or the Homeland Security.
Well, it was the passage. Chairman McCall, who's the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, and Chairman Ron Johnson, the Senate Homeland Security Committee, and Trent Franks, who actually the bill actually originally came from him, have been enormous heroes in this. And last year they passed the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, which is an enormous step in the right direction toward getting the country protected. It requires the Department of Homeland Security to launch pilot programs, to educate industry, to reach out to industry, to do everything that is legally possible, to protect the electric grid. But still, it doesn't have provisions because it's not legally. No body of government has the regulatory capability to order the utilities to actually protect their assets. So that's a shortcoming. You can lead a horse to water. Can we make them drink?
Exactly.
It's not just EMP. Even I may have used this example. I can't remember if we did in the first section, but Take the Great Northeast Blackout of 2003. That was caused by a falling tree branch that hit a high power voltage line, and it put 50 million Americans into the dark for a day, and some people died. Some people died as a result of the blackout, okay? And the U.S. government said to the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, this is unacceptable. We can't have a situation where 50 million Americans are put into the dark by a falling tree branch. So talk to the NERC and fix this problem. And U.S. FERC went on its hands and knees to the NERC and told them, look, please come up with a proposal, find a way to fix this problem. You know how long it took them to come up with what's called an improved vegetation management plan? A decade. It wasn't until 2013 that they had a better plan for protecting against falling tree branches. And their attitude hasn't been any better against cyber attacks or sabotage or EMP. In fact, they don't want to do anything about these other threats. They claim, well, this is the job of the Department of Defense. And we've actually had people from the utility lobbying groups like the Edison Electric Institute testify before Congress that it's not their job to harden the grid, but the preferable solution would be for the Department of Defense to launch preemptive wars against countries like Iran and North Korea to stop them from attacking us in the first place. Now, certainly in extremis, I would advocate that we'd have to do whatever is necessary, including a preemptive war. But the first order of business for solving this problem ought not to be for Americans to have to send their sons and daughters to die in foreign wars. I think we've had enough of those already, just because the electric power industry doesn't want to raise rates by 25 cents a year, for the average consumer to protect the electric grid.
It's appalling. This is appalling.
The government can't force them to do it, though, at this point?
Here's the thing. Ladies and gentlemen, do you understand that what Dr. Pry is talking about, if it were to happen, the only peoples that I'm aware of on the globe that would survive this type of a thing and be able to continue with their with living are people like in the jungles of South America, the jungles of of Africa, and if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Pry, Iran. Don't they have their grid protected in Iran?
Russia and China have hardened their grid, and Iran.
That's great.
And Iran is starting to.
Oh, good.
It's just appalling.
Yeah.
Dr. Pry, we have gotten very close to running out of time here, sir. Let me ask you this. What can the listeners do to help you and help themselves with this? What can they do?
I wouldn't wait for Washington. I mean, we are making progress in Washington, but most progress has been made at the level of the states. Individual states can protect their grids, even though they're part of a larger grid, by installing the blocking devices, the surge arresters. I would encourage your listeners to reach out to their governor, reach out to their state legislature, urge them to do what they're trying to do in Texas, and what they have done in Maine and Virginia and Arizona and Florida, and pass a bill where that's going to require the utility, because they do have the legal authorities, by the way. I mean, this is very important. While those legal authorities don't exist at the federal level, at the level of the states, the state public service commissions do have the power to order the utilities to protect themselves. So that's one of the reasons we've been making more progress at the level of the states. And there's another angle to this, and this is my personal view. It's not the official view of the Congressional EMP Commission, okay? But I think there's an additional reason for people to be activists and to try to get a solution going at the level of the states as well. I mean, I think not just the failure to protect against EMP, but a lot of the problems that have come out of our society are because the concept of federalism, as it was originally conceived by the founders, has been perverted so that everybody thinks Washington has to solve all the major problems of the society. That's not how the society was originally conceived. The Constitution originally conceives the notion that the most governance should be at the level of the states. I mean, since there seems to be this power vacuum of competency and initiative at the level of Washington, if the states step into that vacuum and fill it and start making important decisions like this to protect their people on their own, it could be the beginning of a second American Revolution, where we restore the legitimate balance between the central power in Washington and the states. If the states empower themselves by reaching out and saying, we're not waiting for you, Washington, we're going to act on our own and protect ourselves, this could be the beginning of a very important trend in many areas where power could devolve to the states as the founders originally intended it to.
Amen to that. Real quick, Dr. Pry, if everything went beautifully and they said we could protect the grid and we're starting to do this right away, how long would it take to happen with your $2 billion projection of how that you'd want things protected?
Well, the commission envisioned moving at a normal kind of at a pace where you would be replacing things at the normal replacement rate. Okay, so as SCADAs need to be replaced, you replace them with an EMP-hardened SCADA, and if you did it on a non-rushed basis like that, on a normative basis, it would take about 3.5 years to get all the protections in place. I think the situation, now that was the commission view back in 2008. The threat has evolved considerably since then. Mm-hmm. The view now is that we need something like a Manhattan Project. We need to move much faster. And a lot of very important things. You couldn't do everything, but a lot of things could be done that could save tens of millions of lives if we acted in 6 months. For instance, there's about of the 2,000 transformers, there's about 400 of them that are absolutely indispensable and that service the major metropolitan areas. We should have a crash program to at least protect those. That could be done for $200 million to protect those 400 transformers. That would give us a fighting chance to save most of the people who would die who are located in the major metropolitan areas.
Yeah, a small price to pay. Well, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, we're actually well over time, and it's worth it, though. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Again, Chief of Staff of the EMP Commission. You really need to find out about this, folks, to protect yourself if the government's not going to do it. And the best thing, as he says, is to go to your state legislature, your local folks as well, your local, possibly electronic cooperatives that we have here as well in Georgia. And you gotta try to get them to move because time at this point is of the essence. And North Korea, with all the saber rattling and the problems with Iran, only hopefully won't wake us up too late. It'll wake us up in time. That's all we can pray. Dr. Pry, thank you so much for joining us. We will post your books, by the way, on our website as well. And again, God bless you. God bless the work you do. God bless America, everyone. Thank you for listening to Cowboy Logic Radio. We'll see you next week. And again, have a great week. Be happy, be safe. Again, one more time, can't say it enough. God bless America.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.